This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
African leaders arrive at the G7 summit for meetings with member countries. Tunisia's premier delegates his powers until the end of the presidential election campaign. And Ghanaian artists display their work at an exhibition launched to support creatives. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this half hour. Enumerators use digital devices for the first time to record population data in Kenya. And a Chinese mission pledges to expand the Sino-Guinean hospital. We start the program in France, where leaders of the G7 group of countries are holding a second day of talks at this year's summit in Biarritz. Our correspondent Stefan de Vries told us about the discussions so far and the unexpected arrival of Iran's foreign minister at the meeting.
The Iranian official airplane landed on the airport on Biarritz that is closed during 4 days, so it got some attention. And on board, the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jafar Sharif, and he is here to have discussions with the French Defense Ministry. He was not officially invited, but it seems that Macron, he somehow found a rabbit in the head, like a bluff poker he is playing. So the Iranian Foreign Minister is here to have discussions with France about the nuclear treaty. Well, of course, the trade wars are a very important topic on this summit. Earlier this morning, Donald Trump had a meeting with Boris Johnson, a bilateral meeting. They talked about a potential trade agreement between the UK and the USA when the UK will have left the European Union. And interestingly enough, when Donald Trump was asked a question by a reporter about the escalating trade war between America and China, the American president responded the following.
Yeah, sure, why not? Might as well. Might as well.
Do you have second thoughts about escalating the war with
I have
China?
second thoughts about everything. In many ways, it's an emergency. I have no plan right now. Actually, we're getting along very well with China right now. We're talking. I think they want to make a deal much more than I do. I'm getting a lot of money in tariffs. It's coming in by the billions. We never got 10 cents from China. So we'll see what happens, but we are talking to China very seriously.
So a couple of hours later, the White House said that actually what Donald Trump meant was that he was thinking about even higher tariffs for China. So once again, it's not very clear what's the strategy of Donald Trump in the trade war with China.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron has also welcomed leaders from African countries and top institutions to the G7 summit in Biarritz. He invited the African leaders and representatives for a working session on reducing inequality around the world and to discuss specific problems facing the continent. Now, Tunisian Premier Youssef Chahed has delegated his powers to the Minister of Public Services, Kamel Morjane. Morjane will act as Premier until the end of the presidential election campaign on September 13th. Chahed faced heavy criticism for remaining in power while running for office.
Prime Minister and presidential candidate Youssef Chahed said he will spare no effort to place himself on an equal footing with his competitors in the race for the presidency and to guarantee the neutrality of the administration.
In August 2016, that is 3 years ago, I accepted the responsibility of Prime Minister. I've always been honest and I've never hidden anything from the people. I'm delegating my powers during the election campaign.
Chahed said he was surprised by the calls for his resignation. He added that the new constitution stipulates that the resignation of the head of government implies the resignation of all members of the government.
I'm surprised by the position of some politicians who ignore the constitution and who claim that I'm using state apparatus in my campaign. That's why I'm leaving power to guarantee the transparency and fairness of the presidential elections.
Analysts assert that the constitution allows the head of government in office to stand for election.
The premier could have remained in power. It's legal and constitutional. However, he was under pressure from the opposition and the civil society to run for office as an ordinary party leader and not as a prime minister, who appeared every day in the media to talk about his achievements. Tunisians were confused between the presidential candidate and the premier.
The country's premier defended his government's record. Shahed said he has guaranteed economic stability and provided a favorable security climate nationwide.
Youssef Shahed has reassured Tunisians about the management of the country's current affairs in the coming weeks and the mobilization of the administration for the upcoming events, in particular the beginning of the school year and the return of Tunisian expatriates to their host countries. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A recent election in southern Somalia threatens to renew tensions between Somalia, Kenya and Ethiopia. The state of Jubaland went to the polls on Thursday and re-elected Ahmed Mohamed Islam, a former rebel leader who doesn't enjoy the backing of the central government. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo reports from Mogadishu.
It's an election the central government opposed from the beginning and boycotted by leading opposition candidates. However, these lawmakers met in the port city of Kismayo to elect Ahmed Mohamed Islam as the leader of Jubaland, a region along the border with Kenya and Ethiopia. Ahmed won the polls after garnering 56 out of 74 votes cast by the region's parliament. But in parallel elections held in Kismayo, two opposition candidates declared themselves presidents of the region, widening an already existing political crisis in the region. In the run-up to the vote, the United Nations envoy launched last-minute efforts to have the process postponed. But on Thursday, Ahmed was sworn in as the president of Jubaland for a 4-year term.
The overall mandate and authority lies with the central government. Regional states cannot dictate terms and conditions to the government. The elections didn't happen according to the required standards, and the international community also objected to the electoral process in Jubaland and called for consensus before regional elections.
All three individuals contesting the region's leadership hail from the same clan. Mogadishu says the process failed to meet the required standards. It also raised objections regarding the manner in which clan elders were picked to form the region's parliament. The vote has also ignited tension among Kenya and Ethiopia, that both contribute troops to the African Union mission known as AMISOM. Kenya is the only country to officially congratulate Ahmed's election victory and comes amid a major diplomatic standoff between Mogadishu and Nairobi over a maritime boundary dispute along the Indian Ocean that's currently a matter of discussion at the International Court of Justice. The contested region lies along Jubaland region. Ethiopia and Kenya have troops in Jubaland. Nairobi, however, sees an ally in the current administration in Kismayo. Experts, however, warn foreign forces against interfering in the internal affairs of regional states.
Foreign forces operating in the country should also refrain from politics or taking sides in political disputes. The decision lies with the Somali people, who should have a final say in matters that affect them.
Ahmed has been in charge of the region since 2013, after receiving backing from Kenyan troops to retake control of the strategic port that served as a financial lifeline for Al-Shabaab in the past. The group remains active in the region. Experts now warn that without political stability, militant group Al-Shabaab will likely take advantage of the situation and launch attacks in the region and beyond. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Kenya's national census kicked off on Saturday with enumerators crisscrossing the country to capture details about Kenya's growing population. For the first time, enumerators are using electronic devices to capture and relay the data collected during the survey, which is carried out once every decade. The information is expected to inform the government's future policy decisions.
Sunset marked the beginning of Kenya's 6th national census exercise. With most pubs and other entertainment spots closed, Kenyans headed home to wait for the enumerators, individuals recruited by the government to carry out the 7-day counting exercise. A population census is a process of counting the people in a country at a specific time. Across the country, the over 130,000 enumerators visited homesteads at night when most people were believed to be at home. They set out in groups for security and efficiency.
The Ministry of Interior and Coordination with National Government has collaborated with other agencies, county commissioners, regional commissioners, chiefs, sub-chiefs, and village elders to ensure that there is no destabilization of any kind during this exercise. And indeed, there are also additional police officers that have been deployed to ensure that the exercise goes on smoothly.
It wasn't the first time Peter Serem was participating in the census, but this time things were different. Instead of the old, bulky forms, enumerators carried electronic tablets containing a raft of questions for each member of his household.
The last census, the questions were similar to these ones, but I can see these ones are more than, and it is everything in one. I can see how it can help the government how to plan.
The key questions asked include data about age, sex, marital status, births, deaths, migration and economic activities. This year, for the first time, the country will also count two special groups, persons with albinism as well as intersex individuals included as a third gender in the survey.
So we expect we get the exact numbers, even according to like the total population, ethnic groups and all that, and even the outcome. What do they really want to achieve, just apart from knowing our numbers and the population? At least something like economic balance. We need to know how many are employed, and how can they, bring those numbers together or average them, and exactly what will they do, even perhaps for the poor people.
Census is not for today. It is for posterity. It is data that the government will utilize to be able to plan for those who are yet to be born for the next 10 years.
The census will continue for a week, with preliminary results expected 3 months after the exercise ends and a final report after a year. It is expected to shed light on the changing face of Kenya while highlighting emerging trends and vital issues to be addressed by the government. The data which the government will collect during the census exercise will provide a valuable well of information about the country's population. This information will then be useful in resource allocation as well as in formulating development plans. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya.
In efforts to strengthen cooperation between China and the Republic of Guinea, a Chinese medical mission has signed an agreement with the state of Guinea for the extension of the Sino-Guinean hospital. CGTN's Hannah Vivier has more.
The current project involves setting up of traumatology blocks within the Sino-Guinean hospital, ensuring smooth operation for patients seeking surgical therapy. According to local health officials, the hospital has significantly improved access to medical care in the West African state. It has also promoted sharing of experience between Chinese and Guinean doctors.
With regard to health, I can tell you that China has done a lot for our country. In medical terms, it was one of the first countries to bring medical science and technology to Guinea. It is for this reason that around 1963, Guinea benefited from the presence of assistants and a medical team in some localities.
There are new services that the Chinese have offered, and they have done everything they can to provide these services in our hospital facility. They know that working together requires good communication between us.
The hospital has become a beacon of hope to the local community, with many expressing their gratitude.
It was my mother who had a stroke. Doctors have been taking good care of us since we came here. They come in the morning and evening to check on her condition. I can say that I am satisfied with what they are doing for my mother and that I am seeing an improvement.
China was one of the first countries to send a medical mission to the Republic of Guinea following its recognition at the United Nations level in 1958. As cooperation between the two countries strengthen, it brings with it social and economic diversification to its people. Hannah Vivier, CGTN.
Time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. A black South African winemaker shakes up a white male-dominated industry. And a new film in Mozambique, Redemption, gives the struggling sector a new lease on life.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in Hong Kong now, where more protests have taken place. Thousands rallied in a park in the Tsuen Wan district, while others took over a main street nearby. Police say protesters threw bricks and at least one petrol bomb at officers who fired tear gas to disperse the crowd. Several subway stations were temporarily suspended. The protest followed a demonstration on Saturday in which 29 people were arrested. Police had given permission for Saturday's demonstration to take place, but they say protesters deviated from the agreed route, attacking police and destroying lampposts. And to South Africa now, where a young black female entrepreneur is pushing boundaries in the white male-dominated wine industry. 3 years ago, Cape Town winemaker Janine Peterson launched her own wine company. CGTN's Travis Andrews tells us more.
It's been a good year for J9 Wine's Merlot and Merlot Cabernet blend. Not just are they good on the palate and full of fruit, but some critics have also lauded it. It's down to the persistence and tenacity of the winery's owner, Janine Peterson, who's walked the long and often lonely road of establishing a black-owned wine company in South Africa. The industry is tough, even for established players, but Janine was determined to see through her dream.
I took out all my savings out of my bank account, and then I liquidated some of my assets. One of my biggest ones were my car that I had to sell to start my business. And yeah, I made the sacrifices that I had to make to make this happen.
Today, though, she's taken on a partner to further drive her business, especially the international marketing side, which can bring in much needed revenue to keep the winery operational. The J9 wine range consists of 4 different varietals, including wines that are now being considered for listings by fairly large companies. The range is especially popular with the up-and-coming market.
We know that the younger crowd is coming in with a deeper appreciation. Our wine, again, like I said, is easy drinking. It's for the adventure-hearted. It's something you want to pop open when you come home from a stressful day at work, or just have a little barbecue, I should say. In South Africa, we say a braai.
The industry, though, does not come without its challenges, including the lack of facilities and financing available to the business. But fortunately, they've managed to secure a partnership to get their wines bottled and into the market. Now, even against adversity, J9 Wines has managed to create 2 award-winning wines for 2019. But they've got even bolder ambitions for the future. That's tapping into what is now becoming the most important wine-consuming nation in the world, where wine e-commerce has grown tremendously.
Currently, the Chinese market is one of the most important for us. It is part of our 5-year plan, and we really want to invest quite a bit of time in China to find the right partner, of course, as well as to grow relations within China.
And the winery believes securing just 1% of that Chinese market will not only make them a sustainable company that can further their footprint, but also a force to be reckoned with within the industry for many years to come. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
A group of young artists in Ghana have come together to display their best work at an exhibition in the capital, Accra. It's called Variations and seeks to showcase different forms of visual art in the country. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Ghanaian artist Neil Lante Mills has been practicing his craft for over 30 years. Now, he gets to showcase his works to a large audience.
I focus very much on color. I like to see all the colors in things which people see as flat. People see this, a wall behind you, they see it as white. I like to see it as so many colors coming together to form white. the same way I see life.
This is the first art exhibition held by a group of visual artists in Ghana seeking to promote their works. It comes at a time when many of the artists are not able to hold solo exhibitions due to lack of funds. The focus for this exhibition is on young artists like Mills, who are especially struggling to make it in the industry.
Right now, we do not have an industry. We are working on it. It looks like the system is not supporting the industry yet. But from this exhibition alone, I can see that the young ones are trying very hard to solidify their position in the industry, which is a good thing, because when we were coming up, there was nothing of the sort.
Artists here say there are few galleries and spaces in the country available for them to display their works. They say this makes it difficult to develop a market for their crafts. 30 Ghanaian artists are taking part in this exhibition. They believe by coming together to display their works, it will help attract more local buyers.
When you are down or you are depressed, at least one of the paintings will calm you down. Looking at a particular work for a long time, it takes over your worries and your troubles.
Organizers of the exhibition are looking to create more opportunities for artists in Ghana to showcase their works to a wider audience.
With a lot of artistic events coming up, at least we've seen that some renowned artists have made very bold attempt in trying to project the Ghanaian art beyond our borders. Now, we don't want people to say or tell our narrative. We want to project our narrative ourselves, and the best way is to project the way we work.
Neil Mills and the other artists here will be showcasing their works for the next 2 weeks. Beyond this exhibition, he says he hopes Ghanaians will begin appreciating the arts better and patronize their works. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And staying with the creative matters now, let's turn to the latest film that's gaining interest in Mozambique, Redemption. The country's film sector has been struggling due to years of conflict and economic stagnation. Brian Toussaint tells us more.
The film Redemption depicts the life of a young ex-convict who is grappling with new life in the city of Maputo after realizing that his mother left him with a $30,000 debt, and at the risk of losing his home, Bruno Pereira contemplates rejoining crime. Redemption is a film that signals the rebirth of Mozambique's film sector.
I play Bruno Pereira in the film. He comes home looking for a better life when he gets out of jail, but things degenerate and he's only able to make a living as a car thief and then as a kidnapper.
A sector that was adversely affected by years of conflict and political instability. But this film is now telling the story of the present by being a mirror of the changing times of the now peaceful Mozambique.
It was really important to tell the story because, first of all, it's a film that takes place in the here and now. It's about actual problems, difficulties that are happening today. Most of the films that have been made here in Mozambique are always about the past, you know. The topics are completely different to the ones that we approached. So we decided to tell a story, a contemporary story that's about now, that takes place in the city, you know.
Newly independent Mozambique was a robust base of documentary films in the early 70s. This film seeks to revive the sector by harnessing local talent. But there are challenges, especially with funding. However, locals are loving it.
I think the movie is very good. It represents Mozambicans well. It is top. There are great lessons and everyone gets their own lesson. But what I learned is that we cannot repeat the same mistakes when it comes to something that has serious consequences in life. Money is not everything. The family has to come ahead of everything. And we have to learn to be sincere with others. I love the film. I highly recommend it.
The film budget of $350,000 was sourced through crowdfunding. Parts of the internationally acclaimed movie Blood Diamond were shot in Mozambique. While that was largely a foreign project, Redemption is local and features a local cast. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.